Futures trading involves risk and is not suitable for all investors. Content provided in this segment is meant for educational purposes and is not a solicitation to buy or sell commodities.
Hi, welcome to the September 11th edition of Basis Loaded with Joe Schmit. I am Joe Schmit. This episode, as always, is produced by Paige Driscoll with help from the EverAg Insights team. It's a lovely, lovely fall day here in the upper Midwest, home of the first place Chicago Bears. What better way to celebrate than with the latest from the NDPSR report? And we'll start with butter. This butter number came in at 316.52. That's a -2 to the CME 1 week average of 318.20. That 318.20 was the high week at the CME, so you would expect lower basis -2. That does qualify. Well below our expected 2-cent positive basis. We traded 22 loads at the CME last week. So big volume at the CME maybe went a long way to pull that basis down. So as I said, the basis is too lower, but all in all, this volume number, with the help of that 22 loads traded at the CME, is a real positive. North of 3.6, almost 3.7 million pounds. And what's interesting is as butter has achieved this elevated level on the NDPSR, this is the third week in a row that the NDPSR volume has exceeded our expected 3.5 million pound level. So the butter is the real exception on volume on this week's report, as you'll see, and is the only category that we have higher than expected sales. So a big win for the butter, even with that negative basis, big sales at the high end of the range. I'd certainly have to call that a plus. Up next is our cheese complex, and we will start with the blocks, 210.74. That's a plus 2.5 to the CME 1 week average of 208.70. We traded 7 loads at the CME last week, so limited volume there. And of course, in an environment of limited volume, cheese prices at the CME normally tend to go higher. So this is the second week of our climb, and the CME 1 week average was up 3 cents from the prior week. And then here you'll notice on the NDPSR, up more than 4. So prices on the NDPSR moving in step with the gains that we're seeing at the CME. That 2.5 cent positive basis is a little bit on the low end of our expected basis, but in a rising market, certainly respectable. This volume, though, well short of our expected 12.5 million pounds, just a little bit north of 10,600,000. If you had to give a check mark for that volume of 10.6, certainly a little bit of a disappointment. And then up next in the barrel, 225.87. That represents a plus 4 to the CME 2 week average of 221.82. We traded 5 loads on the CME in the barrel complex, and we are now 20 cents into the rally in the barrel. Certainly been the leader of the cheese category on this move higher. 20 cents into the rally, plus 4 at the low end of our expected basis, but certainly nothing to sneeze at price-wise. But again, similar to the block and similar on this entire rally, volume disappoints. Falling short of expected volume levels, only able to muster a little bit north of 10.7 million pounds in sales. And this continues the several month trend of disappointing sales in cheese. And then we have whey, 51.77. That's a -4 to the CME 1 week average of 56.10. So the NDPSR whey number able to hold above this 51 cent level, certainly an accomplishment there. But you'll notice that this is the second week above the 51 cent level, and this is the second week with disappointing NDPSR sales volume. Last week we failed to surpass the 3.8 million pound level. This week we did surpass that level, but just by a hair, coming in at 3,821,000. 2 weeks in a row, could be a coincidence. 1 week is an anomaly. We'll keep an eye on this next week. But if we continue to see this disappointing volume for the third week in a row, well, then we'll have to call it a trend. If you look at the prior week's NDPSR, this August 24th value of 48.89, certainly a big bump off of prior week's NDPSR. So all in all, you'll have to say that the manufacturer was able to call a full 3 cents over prior week's NDPSR. That's a big jump. However, at that elevated level, as I mentioned, sales limited. And then lastly, non-fat 126.39. That represents a minus 1.5 to the CME 1 week average of 127.90. Again, limited volume here on the NDPSR, falling short of the 16 million pound level. Certainly a disappointment there. Negative basis of disappointment as well. Prices at the CME spot, CME non-fat prices have been on the rise. The NDPSR is having trouble keeping up, and the buyer is having trouble keeping interest at this elevated level. Sales falling off below 16 million pounds. So this is week 1 of the 4-week September pricing cycle, currently getting a September class 3 of $22.95 and a September class 4 of $22.47. So a 50-cent premium class 3 over class 4. Wouldn't that be something? And if you carry current CME equivalents all the way out through the 4-week October pricing cycle, getting October class 3 $23.50, October class 4 $22.87. So that historical relationship between class 3 and class 4 continues into the future if all things remain the same. We'll see what they have in store for us at the CME in the weeks to come. Until then, on behalf of Paige, I'm Joe. See you next week. Bye.